It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
So got an interesting press release from the folks at the Department of Labor. They're saying that the U.S. Department of Labor and Health and Human Services are going to be working together. They've issued this memorandum of agreement, this MOU, that I got to tell you, is it's about damn time. They are going to be monitoring child labor violations across the country. You would think we'd already be doing this. You'd think the states would be doing that. But sadly, what we're seeing is a lot of states are loosening their child labor requirements. Now the Fed is saying, look, through the Wage and Hour Division and Health and Human Services Departments for children and families, they've signed this agreement to formalize a partnership between the agencies and outline procedures that the agencies are going to follow so that they can get out there and share information, deepen their information sharing, coordination, training, and education. This is at least a step in the right direction, because this is the Feds admitting states are doing a horrible job of this. This is a problem. And here to share some thoughts on maybe just how big of a problem this is, I've asked Jess Piper to come talk with us. Jess is the executive director for Blue Missouri. She's also a former state house candidate in Missouri. Rural mom, also fighting for public schools, podcaster. You can check out her podcast, Dirt Road Democrat, hosted by the Heartland Pod. Jess, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of this? I mean, I think this is finally a good step. You've got the feds going, look, maybe we can't trust the states. Maybe the states are going crazy. We've got to start maybe stepping up our game. I think this is a pretty good, at least a good step.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice. We're going to need somebody to step in. You've got states like Arkansas and Iowa, rolling back child labor laws and letting kids go into, really dangerous situations and different places and work. But you know what? If you look back a couple of years, Donald Trump put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education, obviously to dismantle it. But they tried to roll the Department of Labor and the Department of Education into the same department. I don't know, people kind of forgot that part, but this has been a thing for a while.
No, it's about training, like George Carlin used to say, training obedient workers. People are just smart enough to push the buttons and shuffle the papers, but not smart enough to realize how badly they're getting screwed over. And this is one of those things. Now, I'm surprised, and I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm surprised at how many people aren't as freaked out by these child labor changes as I am. I guess I've spent too much time reading labor history and knowing where we've come from. Are you freaked out by the direction that we're going?
Yeah, they're doing it while they're simultaneously defunding schools. They're in places like where I am. I live in a town of 480 people. They'll defund our schools until there's no school left. Betsy DeVos, again, she said it with her own mouth. She said that they envisioned rural schools closing. That there would be no brick and mortar schools for kids like mine, that they could listen to ebooks, work in a field, and hopefully try to find an apprenticeship at, a John Deere dealership. This is purposeful. Iowa says and that kids can go to work as early as 14 in the meatpacking industry, logging industry, and construction industry, 14 years old. I mean, it's bad.
And the worst part that I read about this, and I don't know if you saw this as well, but as long as there's an apprenticeship between an employer and a school, the employer has a liability shield. They're not responsible if the kid gets hurt. To me, that's enormous.
Yeah, there's no liability if they're hurt or killed on the job. So yeah, what they're doing is, right in front of our eyes. I know you said you had talked to somebody about it earlier, but we don't have to have tinfoil hats to see what's going on. If you defund education and you roll back child labor laws, it's right in front of you.
But the message that I keep getting from people is, that's not going to be your kids. And it's not going to be my kids. I'm fortunate enough to have resources that I don't have to send my kids out into the workforce to be able to keep a roof over our head or food on the table. We know who this is aimed at, I think.
It was aimed at kids like me. I got a job. Well, I started working when I was 12 babysitting. I got my first real job at 16 at Piggly Wiggly, and it wasn't to pay for a new car. It was to help my mom buy groceries. And what happened is that I was smart enough, obviously to go to college, but I was paying for it for myself, and I couldn't pay for the first semester, so I ended up I had already been working for 2 years. Why not just keep, working as a cashier? And I think it creates that, the George Carlin, the worker bees, because you're just used to working, and why not just keep going?
Yeah, but I'm like I said, my first job was at 8 years old. I delivered the newspaper. 9 years old, I had two paper routes, a morning and an evening. We all had those kind of jobs. And but they weren't in factories. They weren't on the kill floor. We weren't putting kids back into logging and construction. Because I think having a job is a good thing for kids to learn a little bit of responsibility, but I don't want that to be the sole focus of their childhood. And I fear we're heading back in this direction. And that's what really concerns me.
The Washington Post did a story a couple of weeks ago, and they were very blunt about it. They said in this market, when people are unwilling to pay a living wage or to raise wages or to give people benefits, the next best, place to find your workers is children.
Yep.
It's what's happening.
No, we need cheap labor, and they're cutting off immigration, so
Yep.
It's got to be the kids.
Yeah.
And again, it's all happening right in front of us. And you, as a former teacher, you've watched what's happened to public education, especially in rural communities. As you said, the destruction there is to get everyone into cyber charters. And in my state of Pennsylvania, cyber charters are horrible. I mean, just abysmal failures. And yet there's still money going into them, tons of money, because you know what? We can make them better eventually.
Well, the thing with education, and I'm really going to speak about Missouri here for a second, but it applies to almost every single red state because our legislators don't write their own bills; they get them from ALEC, just like Iowa and Texas and Florida. They're all the same. That's why everybody sees the same exact freaking thing happening, is because they're not writing their own bills. But we're 49th in educational funding, 50th in teacher pay. A starting teacher in Missouri can make as like 27 grand is what they can start at. They keep saying they're going to raise it. It's all smoke and mirrors, but it's purposeful. And everyone needs to understand that the Missouri GOP has been in charge for 20 years. They're the ones who defunded school. They're the ones to make sure that teachers were leaving because they want to privatize the schools, because they want to point to, terrible test scores and say, see, look, these schools suck and your kids shouldn't be in there. And here's a voucher. Well, I tell you, Rick, and anybody in rural America, you can give us 20 vouchers. It doesn't mean anything. There is absolutely nowhere to send my kid. The nearest public school is 20 miles after the one. The nearest private school is an hour away. We can't use vouchers. Vouchers in Missouri, 2/3 of people who receive vouchers, because we passed a voucher scheme, 2/3 of those people already had their kids in private schools. So it's just poor and lower class people, earners that are sending our money to higher and richer, wealthier communities.
No, I mean, but that's, again, I keep coming back to, our political system isn't broken. It's operating exactly the way the wealthy want it to operate. It's Washington's operating exactly the way it operates. Your state house in Missouri, same thing. In Harrisburg, same thing. It's operating exactly the way it's intended. More for the very well-to-do, and while the rest of us, we get to fight over crumbs. But education, and this is one of these things where, we should be fighting this fight on, right, left, center. It shouldn't matter. If you take education away from children, especially working class kids, there's nowhere for them to go but down. And I'm struck by how easy it has been to divide parents on nonsense issues and get them to almost voluntarily destroy their own schools because someone else might be doing something. It's insane to me at how easy it has been. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, they've already taught folks how to ask for less for their children. They have taught them they only need to learn to read, to write, and to do math, which is a third grade education, right? They have told them that indoctrination is happening, that they're reading pornographic, books, that teachers are, pushing their agenda onto children, which we know happens every decade, every single decade. This culture war, and I hesitate to call it that because it is harmful to people. It's not just a culture war; it harms real people. But this comes up over and over again, going back from the 50s with Milton Friedman, and the 70s with the moral majority, and the 80s with Reagan, and it just never stops. And they have already trained people to ask for less, and now people are doing it. They're showing up at Board of Education meetings and losing their ever-loving minds over something that's not even there. CRT is not a thing. It's not taught, K through 12. What does woke mean? I don't even know what that means. And DEI, you're worried that we might recruit Black teachers? Like, the whole thing is nonsense, but it gets folks riled up.
A perfect example, and just how far things have gotten out of control. I was reading a story out of Florida. Yes, Florida. And my favorite line of this story, because evidently parents were upset about Michelangelo's sculpture David. I'm sure you've seen this story.
Yes.
Because they saw the naked David, which we've all seen, and all of us kind of chuckled and moved along. My favorite line from the entire story was, and maybe you'll catch it too, Tallahassee Classical, it's the name of the charter school, a Hillsdale curriculum school is required to teach about Renaissance art in 6th grade. Did you catch the part that I find comical in there?
Renaissance art?
No, Hillsdale
College. Yeah.
Hillsdale College's curriculum. A right-wing school that teaches how to do right-wing radio and all kinds of right-wing extreme curriculum, takes no federal money because they don't want to have to do anything that we the people want. They are privately funded so they can be as crazy as they want to be. They are influencing charter schools with their curriculum, and that's not even crazy enough.
Right. No, I know. Everything is just imploding, and it's all because, well, privatization pushes this. But when you come down to it, the reason, and folks ask this all the time, why are they doing this? Why are they going after it? So in Missouri, we give away billion-dollar tax cuts, and then we decide we're not going to fund Medicaid. And there are so many issues. Our schools are defunded. Our hospitals are closing. I can go out and pick out a piece of pavement off of my highway and bring it into my house if I wanted to. The point is, the GOP has been in charge for 20 years, and they can't say what they've done. They can't be honest with citizens and say, this is on us. So they have to create this insane war, right? They have to go after teaching David because they have no policies and they have nothing that real people want to vote for.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. The sculpture of David, they say, was done sometime between 1501 and 1504, and here we are, 2023, and now people are upset about it. It's
Right.
just crazy to me. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Jess Piper. She's the executive director for Blue Missouri. She's also a former state rep candidate in the state of Missouri, rural mom fighting for public schools, which I love. Make sure you check out her podcast, Dirt Road Democrat, hosted by the Heartland Pod. We'll get links on social media how you can take a look at that. But here's where I want to focus a little bit of time on, because the reality is they're winning. You said Republicans won't take credit for the things that they've done. You're right. They have created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization, and they've done that off the backs of workers. They've done that off the backs of students. They've done that off the back of college students who they've saddled with a lifetime of student loan debt, and yet they're not taking credit for it, and I think we should give them credit for it.
I give them credit for it every day. I mean, I am the most hated person, according to the Missouri GOP. Like, they hate my guts. They roast me every day. But I can't be silent. I ran and I lost. I got 1 in 4 in my community, which was kind of a gut punch. But then when I think, 1 in 4, and when I go to Walmart and Hy-Vee, and these people voted for someone who talked about, abortion, who talked about the fact that everyone deserves health care, who talked about the fact that, you should get 2 years of free college and and daycare for free. So I did talk to a lot of people, and you hear this a lot, Rick. You'll hear people say, oh, those people are just hicks, they vote against their self-interest. But I need your audience to know something. 40% of the seats, House seats last year in Missouri went uncontested. So I'd like to know how these people can freaking vote in their self-interest when there's not a candidate, right? Yeah. They don't have a choice. So until we come together and get our acts together and make sure that people have someone to vote for, nothing changes. We're chasing our tails.
No, and that's a perfect point. And the fact that we've stopped talking to rural communities. We did a multi-state road tour back before the election, and we went from Pennsylvania out to Iowa and through Wisconsin and Michigan and all over, and specifically going to rural communities and talking to rural voters. And you know what miraculously we found out? Their interests are the same. They're the same as in urban areas. They want good jobs. They want safe neighborhoods. They want good schools. They want health care. The problem is we've been pitted against each other, the rurals and the urbans. Just like any other way they can slice and dice us: male, female, black, white, blue collar, white collar, green collar, ring around the collar. They'll figure out a way to divide us, and we let them all the time. And that's the part that drives me insane.
Yeah. And you hear people say that Democrats have left rural areas of America. Well, guess who else has? The Republicans. I've never had a Republican knock on my door or call and ask me for their vote. I don't see them anywhere in my town. There's not only Democrats left, everybody left. Everybody said it is what it is. Y'all are on your own, and so until we do better, we can't. And I know most states are like this. Missouri's 1/3 rural. You can't move the state anywhere if you're not taking rural Missouri with you. And you only do that with candidates. You only do that by sending, money to them, making sure that they're funded. Even if it's in a race that's going to take 3 cycles to win, it's still worth it. You said yourself, the Republicans have been playing the long game since the 50s. They got SCOTUS now. They've had a long time to get this together. And Democrats need to stop being desperate and making knee-jerk decisions, right? We need a long game.
I got to tell you, I love you. Democrats out there, I hope you're listening, and I hope you'll check out the podcast, Dirt Road Democrat. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that, hosted by the Heartland Pod. Jess Piper, I appreciate you taking time for us. You got to come back and talk with us again.
Anytime, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Jess is the executive director of Blue Missouri. Make sure you check out the podcast. Good stuff. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Indigenous people have been saying that we feel a shift in the climate for decades. Climate change is here. The time is now to pass the torch on to the next generation of clean energy warriors. We need to put the land back to work for our people. That means creating jobs for them to live and thrive in our communities. The time is now. Congress must invest in clean energy.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Saturday, big rally down in Waco, Texas, evidently. Number 45, the former president, is having a little shindig down in Waco. And you go, gee, why would you be choosing Waco? Oh, yeah, this is the 30th anniversary of Waco. This is the 30th anniversary of all of the craziness that sprung out of that. And, as I was thinking about the whole David Koresh thing and, the FBI, the ATF and the FBI and all of the right-wing insanity that went on, Timothy McVeigh popped into my head because he was in Waco giving his little spiels about government overreach. And then, of course, he did, blow up a little building in Oklahoma City, if you remember the Murrah building. Interestingly enough, they found him, with the Turner Diaries by his side, the Bible of the right-wing racist. My mind went to this place, and I think this is just not me. Basically, all of the mainstream media going, what? What's Trump doing? Running around, calling, the Manhattan District Attorney human scum, saying that there's going to be potential death and destruction. He is outwardly saying, and this is the weird thing, and I said this from the beginning. I said it was masterful how he turned the power dynamic in this indictment situation. I really don't think it's going to be anytime soon before someone indicts, because I think they're all waiting for somebody else to go first, because they don't want the wrath of the MAGA world to come down on them. And they want to do it on their timetable. And what Trump did masterfully, because he had the power to do it, is he set the timetable. Now, he was going, they're going to indict me on Tuesday, and they weren't ready to indict him on Tuesday. There was a leak, and I'm going, who was the leak, Donald? Was it John Barron? Did John Barron whisper in your ear? For those who don't know, John Barron is Trump's alter ego. Trump used to call people as John Barron and say, John Barron, here, Donald Trump would like to speak with you. Please hold. And he would be his own secretary under the name of John Barron. So I'm assuming John Barron whispered in his ear and said, they're coming for you. And this gave him the ability to say, no, I'm going to set the term. And look, I give him credit. The guy's not dumb. He's got everybody on their heels at this moment. And he knows that his base, some of them are off the beaten path. Got me thinking, by doing this stuff, what are you setting up? I mean, today you had a white powder sent to this Alvin Bragg's office. That was I forget what the message was. You're going to die, or we're going to kill you, or something like that. Alvin, I'm going to kill you was the message. And you go, this is a former president stoking this kind of anger. Now, we still don't have a former president who's been indicted yet, but we got one that wants violence in the streets. He is threatening. He's threatening the district attorney. If you charge me with the crime that someone else went to jail for on my behalf, there will be bloodshed. And he's doing it in Waco during the 30th anniversary of the Branch Davidian debacle, the siege, if you will. That's planned. Doing this on purpose, hoping. I'm not gonna beat around the bush anymore. This guy wants chaos. I think it was Chris Christie who said that he thrives in chaos, thrives in turmoil, because he keeps getting people to say his name. It keeps him in the news. And the question I keep coming back to, when will we stop? And I don't want, this is one of those things that someone said, do you want him indicted? I said, if he's a criminal and he and there's evidence, yeah, I want him indicted. I want him held accountable. But I think it should be after 2024. I think he should be beaten soundly at the polls when people say, no, we don't want this kind of person with this kind of behavior sitting in the most powerful chair on this planet. Someone who can't even complete a sentence. Have you listened to him speak? You know, they rail about Joe Biden. And even I say Joe Biden can't get a sentence out. But you know what? Neither can Trump. Guy speaks in half sentence fragments. And even those are sometimes unintelligible. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At The Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.